One of the biggest problems in today's society is the rapid rise of mortgage payments over the last few years. But the real problem lies with how mortgages are created by the banks out of thin air and how usury interest is then applied to this fiat credit. The banks fail to tell you that when you sign your death pledge agreement, which is what the word mortgage really means. As my mortgage has more than doubled in just over a year, and the fact the bank has a possession order against my property, I am now just 30 days away from missing a payment and facing eviction from my home of over 25 years. Desperate times lead to desperate measures, and hence why I've come up with the idea of trying to crowdfund my mortgage in its entirety by simply asking people to send me £1. In summary, I need 250,000 good kind souls to send me £1. If I am successful, it is then my full intention to take legal action against the bank, and I will be able to do so with clean hands, as I will have paid them back in full. I want to ensure that my mortgage was not missold to me, which I clearly believe it was, that the Halifax were trading solvently on the 7th of September 2007, as 10 days later the HBOS Act came into effect, enabling that Bank of Scotland to buy the Halifax. And then was my mortgage securitized and sold on in full to a third party in a pool of other mortgages? And then how did they have legal standing when making their claim against me for a possession order which has been against my property for the past 12 years and was renewed 2 years ago by the local county court? Obviously, taking legal action against the bank that has provided the mortgage after paying them off might seem rather strange, but is probably the best and the only way to prove their fraud, their failures, and their fiat fictional debt. If successful, it could possibly create a floodgate case which would enable other mortgagors to take similar action. It could make PPI look like loose change. It is almost 20 years since I appeared on Dragon's Den with the Bed and Cube, and over a decade since I was made unlawfully bankrupt by my local council. In 2016, I graduated from Plymouth University with a law degree, which has really helped me to assist other people in many ways, including keeping their houses and not being evicted. However, sadly, most of them were unsuccessful. I do not want to lose my home where I have lived for 25 years and my daughter Scarlett was born. I certainly don't want to have to ask friends, family and neighbours to come and stand outside my house and protect it from the bailiffs. Recently, we have seen the banks and indeed councils evicting people from their homes, including people like Sheena in Kent, who has stage 4 cancer, and Matthew in Derbyshire, who was also evicted from his home recently. However, with the help of some educated and dedicated people, they have now been able to recapture their homes lawfully. Just a few weeks ago, I had to raise £2,000 in just 2 days, and I did it with just a few hours to spare. This was to prevent my case being sent to the bank's lawyers and for them to apply to the court for a date for an eviction. I've seen over the last few years lots of different things being crowdfunded, and so I thought, why not? At least I have to try and do this, and I believe that asking for just £1 is the best way to do it. Indeed, I owe it to my best friend Michael Doherty, who sadly passed away suddenly in early February this year, to do this. He told me I had to try because it just might work, and after all, charity begins at home. If successful, not only will I save my home, but I will be able to start the legal action against the bank, and I would hope that I could keep sendmeapound.com going so that it could be set up as a non-profit CIC company, which then enables us to then save other people's homes who are desperate and about to be repossessed. When you consider that the reality is the banks do not lend you money, they create it out of fresh air, and then you charge interest on it. Here's a clip from Professor Richard Werner, who explains it in simple terms.
If we want to produce something, we need funding, so there's a role for banks in almost everything that's happening in the economy. But what exactly is that role? I'd like to reflect on that. Banks are being thought of as intermediaries, but this is not really what's happening. Banks,
what are they then?
the creators of the money supply.
So you're firmly of the view that banks create money out of thin air?
Yes, well, I produced the first empirical studies to prove that in the 5,000-year history of banking. Banks are thought of as deposit-taking institutions that lend money. The legal reality is banks don't take deposits and banks don't lend money. So what is a deposit? A deposit is not actually a deposit. It's not a bailment. It's not held in custody. At law, the word deposit is meaningless. The law courts and various judgments have made it very clear, if you give your money to a bank, even though it's called a deposit, this money is simply a loan to the bank.
That's true. Yeah.
So there is no such thing as a deposit.
So you think it's probably inadequately named then?
So banks borrow from the public.
To me, it feels like the bank gave me some rusty old iron which they manifested from nowhere, and they want me to give them the same weight in real gold in return. So the money created by the bank is not the same money that we pay them back with. Please visit sendmeapound.com and consider sending me £1 so that I can save my home and then beat the banks and help others who are threatened by eviction.